The gospel lesson this morning comes from the 13th chapter of Matthew, verses 24 through 30 and verses 36 through 43. And that is found on pages 14 and 15 in the Pew Bible. He put before them another parable. The kingdom of heaven may be compared to someone who sowed good seed in his field. But while everybody was asleep, an enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and then went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared as well. And the slaves of the householder came and said to him, "Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? Where then did these weeds come from?" He answered, "An enemy has done this." The slave said to him, "Then do you want us to go and gather them?" But he replied, "No, for in gathering the weeds, you would uproot the wheat along with them. Let both of them grow together until the harvest. And at harvest time, I will tell the reapers, collect the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn." Then he left the crowds and went into the house. And his disciples approached him, saying, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds of the field." He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are collected and burned up with fire, so will it be at the end of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will collect out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all evildoers, and they will throw them into the furnace of fire, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Let anyone with ears listen." This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
When people ask me what I like to do for fun, my most consistent answer is that I like to read. Specifically, I like to read fiction. Now, to be clear, I read lots of nonfiction, and most of the books I own are nonfiction. And while nonfiction is interesting and informative, it's not what I would consider fun or relaxing. Before COVID, I used to go to the library and pick out fiction to read. Libraries usually have a lot of fiction, and yes, I often judged a book by its cover. We're taught at a young age not to judge a book by its cover, that we shouldn't pass judgment on someone or something without evidence to support our opinion. Where did this expression come from? Most sources tie the idea to George Eliot's book, The Mill on the Floss, written in 1860, which in itself is ironic because, as Wikipedia explains, George Eliot was the pen name of Mary Ann Evans, one of the most prominent English writers of the Victorian era, who adopted a male pseudonym to ensure that her works were taken seriously, as female authors at the time were frequently restricted to romantic fiction. In other words, judging a book by its author's gender. In Eliot's book, the character, Mr. Tulliver, is talking to Mr. Riley. Mr. Tulliver had bought a set of uniform, beautifully bound books at a sale without knowing their actual contents. Kind of reminds me of my grandmother, who used to buy books based on their color to arrange them in the bookshelves. But in the story, Mr. Tulliver's daughter, Maggie, has been caught reading Daniel Defoe's book, The History of the Devil. Now, Mr. Riley suggests that this is not an appropriate book for a little girl. And then Mr. Tolliver then laments. But they've all got the same covers, and I thought they were all of one sample, as you may say. But it seems one mustn't judge by the outside. This is a puzzling world. But we all do it. And judging a book by its cover, or picking a bottle of wine by its label, doesn't really hurt anyone. The problem is that our judgments go far beyond book covers and wine labels. We judge people, consciously or unconsciously. Of course, it's natural to judge, to assess the behavior and motivations of others, and it's part of how we learn, grow, and make decisions on a daily basis, as one source describes it. However, making discernments about others is different from being judgmental. Being judgmental often implies judging excessively to the point that it negatively affects you and the people around you. Negative judgmental attitudes can stem from a variety of cognitive biases and mental shortcuts, such as stereotyping or something called the fundamental attribution error, which is when we assume others' actions are a result of their character rather than a behavior caused by a specific situation. These biases skew our perceptions, leading us to draw conclusions that are not only inaccurate, but also often unfair. However, negatively judging others can provide a degree of psychological comfort, such as a sense of superiority, or a way to deflect attention from our own shortcomings. And this is why we do it. We tell ourselves, I may not be perfect, but at least I don't do that. Of course, it seems like every time I think that, I catch myself doing exactly that. Today's text from Matthew's Gospel is from Jesus' parable discourse, one of the 5 major extended speeches given by Jesus to describe the kingdom of heaven or reign of God in the world. Unlike some of the other parables in chapter 13, today's parable and its explanation are only found in Matthew's Gospel. In this parable, a landowner plants good seeds. An enemy sneaks in and sows weeds in with the wheat seeds. The plants grow, the slaves see the weeds, offer to remove them. The landowner tells them to leave the weeds until harvest time. Then those harvesting will gather the wheat and burn the weeds. The 5 verses that are not included in today's lectionary passage include the parable of the mustard seed, the parable of the yeast, and some comments about parables in general. We'll get to those on a different Sunday. Then the passage resumes with an explanation of the parable of the weeds, which is only provided to the disciples, not the crowds who heard the original parable. As you heard in verses 37 through 39, the one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed are the children of the kingdom. The weeds are the children of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, and the reapers are angels. But we're never given an explanation for why the landowner wants the wheat and weeds to grow together. Or, following the explanation, language about why Jesus wants the children of the kingdom to live with the children of the evil one. Some scholars have suggested the Greek word translated weed refers to a poisonous weed that closely resembles wheat and is plentiful in Israel. The difference between this weed and actual wheat is not obvious until the plants mature and the ears appear. Apparently, the ears of real wheat are heavy and will droop, while the ears of the poisonous weed stand up straight because they're lighter. And supposedly Roman law prohibited the malicious sowing of such weeds in an enemy's field for this very reason. This understanding leads to the idea we shouldn't judge others because we can't distinguish between wheat and weeds either. And this is true. No matter how well we know or think we know someone, we don't know how another will be judged on Judgment Day. But in this parable, the plants came up and bore grain, and the slaves realized that some of the plants were weeds. That's when they asked the master about the quality of the seed he had sowed, and the householder explained about the enemy's part in this occurrence. No matter what kind of weed it is, and this parable is the only time that this Greek word is used in the Bible, so we have no other context clues. By the time the plants have grown enough to produce grain, the roots of each are probably intertwined. And it would be difficult to remove the weeds without harming the wheat plants. Perhaps not impossible, but at least difficult and/or time-consuming. So what does it mean for us that the children of the kingdom and the children of the evil one are to remain together until Judgment Day? Yes, the parable is clear that we are not the ones to judge others. That job belongs to the Son of Man, to God. But there's this lingering idea that removing the bad would harm the good. Or is it that the good can help the bad? Do the weeds protect the wheat from other predators? In Daniel Defoe's book from 1726, The History of the Devil, that I mentioned earlier, he suggests that the devil influences mankind through human agency, as well as assuming a physical form in the world. In the opening pages of that book, Defoe writes, "Bad as he is, the devil may be abused, be falsely charged, and causelessly accused. When men, unwilling to be blamed alone, shift off these crimes on him which are their own." Perhaps the roots of good and evil have become so intertwined that we are no longer purely wheat or purely weed. Maybe we're all hybrids or genetically modified. I don't know, but that's for God to sort out. I think the lesson for us is about interdependence. We need each other. Within this community and beyond these doors, our roots are bound together. While it's natural to judge others, how can we lessen the amount we judge, the quantity of our judgment? How can we instead be curious about how another demonstrates the image of God within them? And how can we learn from them? What would this world look like if, instead of deciding who's in and who's out, who's wheat and who's weed, who's good and who's bad, we stopped judging and stayed curious? Perhaps this is what the kingdom of heaven is like. Amen.